Welcome to Rev Up Your Leadership with Hilda Gann, the podcast for forward-thinking, proactive leaders who believe in a people-centric approach to business. Whether you're an executive, a seasoned manager, business owner, or a novice manager, this show is for those who know that putting people first drives real, lasting success. Each episode, I sit down with passionate guests, leaders who share real-world experiences, proven frameworks, and insights from their industries. Together, we explore what it takes to lead with impact, stay ahead of the curve, and build thriving, future-ready organizations. If you're ready to lead with purpose, inspire your team, and think strategically, it's time to rev up your leadership and rev up your success. Welcome to another episode of Rev Up Your Business. We're in season 7, and my guest today is Nicole Troster from Courageous Lab. And that's courageous with a cœur as in the heart in French. So I love the name of your company, Nicole. Nicole is the go-to business coach for women entrepreneurs scaling their service-based businesses beyond 500K. She helps clients gain clarity on their ideal customer and systematically aligns every functional area around those needs to create authentic, sustainable, and profitable growth. Drawing from her experience as a founder of an award-winning accelerator that has supported over 450 led ventures, Nicole now applies those proven frameworks to help individual clients build businesses that put people at the center of profitable growth. Thank you, Nicole, for coming and joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here, Hilda. I'm really excited to jump into this with you.
Well, when you talked about the 450 women-led businesses, I'm one of those proud people that you are part of. And for those who don't know Nicole was the founder of a program called Ella. And Ella was inaugurated over 5 years ago, right in the midst of the pandemic. We started live for 2 events, and then you scrambled with your team to create a sustainable virtual program for us that lasted 4 months. Was it 4 months? Yeah, I think 4 months. So, and since then, you've been able to continue doing that and nationally. So really appreciate what you did. And you created a formula based on that.
Absolutely. So we like you said, we started Ella in arguably one of the worst times for women entrepreneurs. But through that experience, I was able to build a framework that I use right now to coach women entrepreneurs and help them scale their businesses. And it's been hugely rewarding. Absolutely.
Yes. And I'm so glad that now you are doing this on your own and really helping women entrepreneurs, again, build their business. And so today we're going to kind of talk about what are those is at the core of you creating this business. And we're going to talk about that as well as the leadership aspects of it, because that's integral to it. So why don't you start by talking about that first core concept?
Absolutely. So really the first core concept is about putting your client or your customer at the core of everything that you do. And the reason why that's so important is I think a lot of businesses and organizations, they lose sight of the client somewhere along the way. And everything that we do has to revolve around the client because what we're doing at the end of the day is meeting client needs. So, getting that feedback, getting those insights about whether what we're doing is working or not is absolutely key to building a sustainable business. And making sure that we know what our customers' needs are and we're meeting those evolving customer needs is really, really important.
I like how you say they lose sight of. I'm not even sure they have sight at the beginning, right? I mean, I used to, when I first started, tell people about all the things I do, knowing that they need all the things I do, but never really saying, what do you need? And of all the things I do, here's the things that I can do to help you. And I was just talking to a colleague of mine. She said, yeah, Hilda, we really need to make sure when we're creating a relationship, you need to understand what they need. You need to
they need to know that you can identify their need or identify with their pain. And then from there, you have the need that can be the solution. Because later on, when we're colleagues and friends and we know each other, sure, I can buy into the vitamins, but I'm not going to buy vitamins from you at the beginning. I want to buy a solution to my pain. So I need that kind of medication and not the enrichment parts. So I thought, that's so true.
Yeah, and I think, the metaphor that you just used in terms of the medication is really good. And I think as our relationships evolve, we get to know those pain points, more intrinsically. So I think from that perspective, it becomes easier to buy and sell, like you said, because we understand those innately better. But certainly at the beginning, yeah, it can be hard to kind of navigate that. And part of it is kind of experimenting and asking a lot of questions, getting to know, those pain points and to make sure that our understanding of whatever problem you're kind of facing, that you do understand it and understand it from your client's perspective, because it could be a little bit different, in their circumstances or with their context than perhaps somebody else's. But and very much like the metaphor that you used, and again, it all comes down to like nurturing those relationships and the needs of that individual.
And I guess the thing is really helping people to, the terminologies have a curiosity, by an open curiosity to learn more about their needs. Because when you have that conversation and they talk to you, you can really discover that.
And I think we've all been in circumstances where somebody is talking at us. They just want to get their points through. And you can see that they're not actively listening. They're not asking good questions about the situation. They're not seeking to understand and have that curiosity that you talked about, Hilda. They're just kind of trying to get everything out and on the board and forgetting about the person on the other side. And, I think the leaders that are the best at managing relationships really do have that curiosity, ask great questions, spend a lot of time listening as opposed to speaking.
Yeah. What other advice might you have for people to encourage their thinking mindset of clients at the core?
I think, for a lot of clients, it's important that they feel heard and seen. I think for us as individuals, as human beings, like we all want that and seek that to some degree. And, if you're able to put your client at the center, to make sure that they feel seen, they feel heard, that, you're creating that level of experience for them, that it's not just you handing off the product. Like, let's say you're an accountant and you're just getting the taxes done. No, it's not about that. It's about the whole experience from beginning to end and making sure that they have their needs met. And thinking about those things, I think, intentionally can help you to build loyalty and have customers who love working with you because of the experience that you provide. So thinking about in those terms can be really, really helpful. And then just being very intentional about each aspect of that process from beginning to end. And even before it starts, right? Like when they first learn about you, how are they learning about you? Are they coming to you because they've just had something blow up in their face and they need somebody ASAP? Or is it, something that is nurtured over time and, having different interactions with that person? So really thinking about it from start to finish and being very intentional about it, I think would be the top tips from me.
You use that word intentional many times, and I think that's a really key word to help people who tend to think about, I want to share with you what I know, but step back, be intentional, listen. And it's not necessarily in some people's DNA, or they want to have the answer, so they're not listening. So if we learn to be more intentional, to listen more, we will build that trust with the client, right? That will be a byproduct. I remember this interesting anecdote. I was at a networking event, and two of the people that I knew were with this third person who I didn't know. And then I came up to them, and they were listening intently. And the person was basically, he says, and I sell commercial real estate. I do home. I can sell homes. I'm really good at it. And I have, and he never stopped to breathe. So nobody could interject to save the topic. And 3 minutes later, he's still talking about what he can do. He doesn't even know if we're interested in commercial or selling a home or anything. And then I said, I see you guys are busy. I'll catch up with you later. I dodged that, but they were just still polite, listening, letting him do it. So please learn to listen, learn to think about your client and what they need, and that may help you be more intentional and keep clients at the core. That's great. What about your other core concepts? What's the next one you want to share with us?
The next one shouldn't be a surprise, but it's about putting your team at the core, and really leveraging your team to kind of elevate those experiences that we kind of talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, our team members are the front lines. They're the ones interacting with the clients. They're the ones, completing the client work, delivering the client work. They're the ones with the relationship with the clients. So involving them in the design of the service, so to speak, is really, really important. Involving them in gathering feedback from the clients is also really important, because that helps you to assess whether you're meeting client needs, under the first core concept. So team is such an important part of that, because they have insights that you may not, because they are dealing with the clients, on a regular basis. And part of that is also really, really important, because you want your team to buy into what you're doing. Like, you want them to be proud about the services that they're delivering, because if they're not happy, the clients will not be happy. And then there's the domino effect in all of that. By involving them in the process, by making sure that you're collecting their insights, that they have an understanding of how the services are going to improve, and taking their ideas about how to improve the services even, is really, really, really important. You want people who, see themselves in the service, that, are proud of what they're delivering. They want to build, and nurture good client relationships, because at the end of the day, it's all about those relationships, that experience, how the customers feel. How are you making them feel at the end of the day? And how are your staff making them feel? So again, involving the team and getting insights and having buy-in from the team is hugely important, from my perspective.
From my perspective too, and you know that my husband and I had our engineering company, iTransit, and when I think back on it, when you involve your team, you are creating a company that core values and belief are unified. It's not an us versus them, it's a we culture. And I can remember when we were about 25 employees, this lawyer that used our services a lot for hearings said, we're really proud of you, Tyrone. You always gave great service, and you've grown it to 25 people. And it's very hard to grow a business to 25 people and still have that same quality service, and that the staff are an extension of what you stand for. So as businesses grow, they really need to think about those values, hire the people that believe in it, but also nurture them to feel a pride of ownership and a pride of what that is. And I see you nodding your head.
Absolutely. And I think, if we look around, there are a lot of organizations out there, but I think the ones that are retaining top talent are the ones that are able to kind of really lead in a values-based way, having people at the core, doing things like active listening, and making sure that there is that opportunity for feedback and for improvement. What I mean, we're not all born experts, especially from a leadership perspective. It's something that evolves constantly. So how are we making sure that we provide opportunities for our customers or for the team to evolve with us and to provide that feedback, and for us to take that in and to be better at what we're doing? So yeah, that I think that's all part and parcel, and it all goes really well together. And it's kind of the best way. Like, you see a lot of organizations evolving that way.
Well, they say that when when an employee feels valued, they are 69% more likely to stay than a person who feels like, well, you're just taking advantage of me. You're asking me to do all these long hours, and I don't get, I don't get recognized for this, and I don't get compensated. This kind of disparate functioning creates this kind of unhappiness, which then affects productivity. It affects client relations. So it's not good when you do that. One of the things I wanted to kind of reinforce is that leaders, especially when they're starting out in a business and maybe they didn't have that experience of leading a team, they tend to think as leaders, well, I need to know all the answers. I need to give all of the answers. And so they're not comfortable with listening, getting feedback, as you say. Get them involved. Ask them what they think. They know the clients. They know certain things better than you. So you don't have to have all those answers. And so really helping leaders understand that you are wanted for your more strategic view and guiding the success of the organization, not for answering all the questions. Let the experts who know the clients or who know the product or who know the software continue their excellence. You don't need to know that, but you need to be able to help them in a more strategic way, in a more way that impacts on the company as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of that in again, these companies that are evolving the way that they're working with their people. And I think it's really, really important. Like, how can you harness the talent that you have within the organization to put out the best products, the best services, and really build a company culture that is values-based and a place where people want to be. And I think, in line with what you just said, part of that is, allowing people the space to show up as experts in their own field, have the trust of the leaders within the organization to fully show up as themselves and to bring what the best of what they offer to the table. And, you and I both know that employee retention, attracting top talent, these are really, really important topics for leaders today. And, if you're very intentional about building the type of culture where people want to be, naturally, I think you're able to retain top talent better, because again, if people stay, then you don't have to attract new talent necessarily. Like, you can do things like promote from within, and making sure that people have what they need within the organization.
Before we go on to the next core value, we talked about it. You've done 450 women leaders or businesses and help them grow. What are some of the kind of trends that you see to help leaders be better leaders, to help business owners to be more successful in growing their business? What are some of those key trends that you've noticed?
So one thing absolutely is the listening piece, and making sure that you're getting the feedback that you need. I think the idea of experimentation is very, very, very important. I think a lot of the leaders that I've worked with are so focused on getting things perfect that they will procrastinate, they will not launch new products and services as a result, and are so focused on the little details and getting everything just right that they miss opportunities. And so where we can experiment more, and put something together that's just good enough to get that feedback and so you can continue iterating. That's something that I've really noticed a shift, and certainly with the coaching clients that I work with, that's something that I encourage quite heavily, because I think it's the best way to go about things. Like, action is so important, and action outpaces planning, so much. Like, if you want to be successful, take action. You know what I mean? Roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty, try new things, and don't worry about it not being perfect, because the feedback is the most important aspect. It's not how perfectly you delivered that service. Yeah. People can be understanding if you don't deliver something perfectly, especially where you take that feedback and you take the time to let them know how you implemented. Hey, you had a great suggestion about this, and this. This is how I implemented it. because people want to make sure that, their feedback isn't taken and then just shelved somewhere. They want to see it in action. So where you're able to kind of report back to either employees or customers about where you've done that, they'll happily give that feedback and take the time to provide feedback because they know that it's being used well.
And that's such valuable information, because I think as women, often perfection is something that is in our DNA, and then that need to be perfect can stall you to miss opportunities. So have the courage to try, and have the courage to learn from those nuances that need fixing. Nothing's perfect. It's what you will make mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's how you deal with those mistakes that is the essence of creating greater client relationships, greater employee relationships. Don't feel afraid to show that you can, fix something, that you can make a mistake. And that the staff can make a mistake sometimes. It's how you handle it in a way that continues to allow for people to grow, and for your client relationships to grow. Yeah, thank you.
And one thing I just want to add to what you just said, Hilda, is the idea that it also allows us to bring down the pressure. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to perform at peak levels. But when we allow ourselves to experiment and allow ourselves and our staff to make mistakes, as you said, it reduces the pressure. It allows us to be human, right? And I think that's just so important in a time where, trust is at an all-time low in our leaders, and where people are looking for that connection and that sense of belonging. I think now it's needed more than ever.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Rev Up Your Leadership with Hilda Gann. Are you looking to build stronger teams, enhance communication, or lead with a people-first approach? I'd love to invite you to a free 30-minute discovery call to explore how we can help you with strategic HR consulting, leadership training, and team and communication effectiveness training. Visit peoplebrightconsulting.com to book your call. Now let's get back to the episode.
I think there's another one that we wanted to talk about at your core concepts. What's the last one?
So it really comes back to a word I've used a lot during this conversation, which is being intentional. So it's culture by intention and not by default. And part of that is just, especially taking the time from a strategic standpoint, as you talked about earlier, making sure that you're designing a culture that people want to be part of, that people want to draw services from, is hugely important, and never more important than right now. I think, especially when you look at women leaders, the way that they buy services, the way that they choose who their vendors are going to be, that trust component is very, very, very important. So being intentional in terms of how you design a service, the experience from beginning to end, and making sure your customers feel heard, throughout the whole process, and where you're addressing some of the things that may not have been delivered perfectly the first time. Just making sure that you're building intentionality into different parts of the process is hugely important, because if you're not intentional about it, you'll end up with a culture that is default, and then who knows what that looks like. You're not driving what that looks like. You're basically passively succumbing to what it looks like because you're not being intentional about it.
And people think, well, I don't have enough staff to create culture. No, it is so important to create it from the start, because if you wait till 10, it's too late. It is too late. The culture is already set. The people who are there are evolving what the norm of the culture is. So set it intentionally. And when, my husband and I were dreaming about what's this going to look like, we said, wouldn't it be nice if people love what they do and love where they work? So we set intentionally that we were going to make sure that there was a team concept. We were going to make sure that people knew it was different. That in engineering, it used to be everybody got everybody got 2 weeks of vacation. No ifs, ands, or buts until you, I guess, get to a managerial level. He said, no, I want everybody to have 3 weeks. So we established a sense of equality. We established a sense of, team camaraderie. And we established a sense where people were going to grow professionally. And what does that mean? What system did we need to put in place? And I remember I was sitting on the board at our local hospital at the time, and they gave us an educational session, and they brought in somebody to talk. And that person says, it starts with your foundation, your mission, vision, and values. And when you create that foundation, everything grows from there. The type of clients that you want, the type of operations that you'll have, and in my case, the human resources, the operations side of things. So the kinds of people we hired were people that were going to help others grow and also be part of the team. So intentional is so important. I had one client, and they were hiring me because now they were at so many employees, so they needed to have their processes in place. They didn't have a mission, vision, or values. They were 5 years old. They were 5 years old, and she was hiring people, but she didn't know why she was hiring. She didn't know what to look for in her hire. It was more episodic rather than a foundation. So your intentional resonates with me so much, so much.
I was just going to say that the company that you and your husband built, like, I think you summed the model up perfectly, and the company that you built is living proof of why the model works, and certainly why people wanted to be involved with your company, and so I just wanted to kind of add that and acknowledge what you've accomplished from that perspective.
Well, and thank you very much. And when I started my People Bright company, it was to help more and more companies really build their business, and to be people-centric, and they either didn't have the knowledge, the time, or the experience to build it. And this is where I come in to help them build that framework, build that company where people really do get along and really are growing and are proud of it. And maybe I can do a little bit of an anecdote. One of our staff members decided it was time for another reunion. We used to have them every 2 or 3 years. Somebody, not my husband and I, but somebody would say, hey, it's time to get together again. And post-COVID, this was the first one post-COVID, and over 35 people showed up in the general local area. And we sold the business in 2013, I think it was 2009. That's a long time ago for this many people. And the joy that they had just to come back and talk and to be grateful. And we used to say we would get together for a certain reason. Now it's there'll never be another iTrans. That's the belief that this was such a magical, special place, and everybody who was there has fond memories of it. And some of them have actually taken bits and pieces and put them in their organizations, and you can see it there. And so it's great when you can help create other legacies. So thank you. And you've been making such a mark on so many women in building their businesses as well. So I think we're both in the business of helping others to create something that's special.
Absolutely.
Any other tips and strategies you want to share? Because again, you have that experience of 450 women, and we were in cohorts and groups, and so we would develop that kind of synergy and understanding that would support each other, and you would be, hearing all of that. So you've got this massive knowledge of these multiple organizations.
So I think we've talked a lot about what the leaders can do to kind of set up the organizations for success. I think one thing to set up the leader for success, which I think is really, really important, which you just touched on, is the sense of community. I think sense of community is really, really important. Making sure that you have somewhere to go to as a leader to get unstuck, to get ideas about how to either continue evolving as a leader, how to address specific problems that you might be having within the workplace, to kind of anticipate maybe some of the challenges that you may be faced with as the organization grows. I think having a place where people can cheer you on is also really, really, really important. And I think the other thing that you mentioned that I would also like to touch on is being intentional about your growth as a leader. Because one of the things that, my experience with Ella taught me is that your business or your organization will only grow as far as you do as a leader.
Yeah.
So wherever you can kind of add to your skill set, your toolbox, make sure that you continue growing as a leader so that you can take on new challenges and help people navigate those challenges as well is hugely, hugely important.
It's so important, like continuous learning for yourselves as leaders, for your employees, because for all of us, as we continue to grow, we become more insightful in terms of who we are, how we relate to people, and maybe our passions, finding our passions, because a lot of the people that I experience through my communities is that those people who are doing work that for them is meaningful and passionate, you just know that this is the kind of person you want to work with. That this is their passion. This is what they do well, and they want to do it well. So therefore, you may want to purchase somebody's services or connect with them. For sure, for sure. Yeah. I I know myself that having Ella at the time when the COVID first hit was a lifeline that I didn't appreciate as much until afterwards. I was actually in 3 women's communities at the same time, so I never felt the loneliness of somebody who was out there by themselves trying to figure out what to do, and not having, as you say, people to listen to, people to cheer you on, people to get new ideas and to problem solve some of the situations that you had. So I think that sense of community, that continuous learning to grow, some really, really good points. What's next for you, Nicole?
So I'm working with a lot of women-led service-based companies through my company, Courage Labs. I've developed an 8-week program where I'm working with individual clients to help them scale their businesses to 500,000 and beyond. So doing more of that, taking more clients on. I'm also working on some pretty interesting, passion projects in the fall where I'm focused on inclusive capital and inclusive ecosystems. That's work that I'm very passionate about and that drives me. And so I'll be doing a lot of events or event series on that, and just getting involved in more communities, because I think, to your point, you were involved with 3 during the time that you were involved with Ella. Each community brings something different. So making sure that we're getting what we need from the communities that we're a part of is also really important.
And I think that's the key, is getting what you need, because I think at one point I had 7 different associations or boards, and I thought, what is adding value? What is nice to have but not need to have? And then I pared it down. So you're right. You need to be critical of not going to everything and anything. Go if it brings you joy, if it moves you personally, or if it helps you move your business. But don't go and think, geez, I just spent 3 hours and I've done this for 6 months now and I'm not getting anything in return. This may be something I should let go of, right? Feel free to let go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much. How do people get a hold of you, Nicole?
So the best way to get a hold of me would be through my website. So it is couragelabs.com, and that's spelled COEURAGE labs.com. Or they can connect with me on LinkedIn. But if you want to book a consultation, feel free to do so through my website.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you again for joining me, sharing your wisdom, your experience, and how you can help people grow their business and understand how they can grow their confidence and abilities as leaders. Much appreciated, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me, Hilda, and great conversation. And again, thank you to all of the things that you've done in building great workplaces and, making sure that people felt part of something bigger.
Thank you. It brings me joy for you to say that, and it brings me joy for the experiences that I've had. to do what I've been doing. So you can tell this is my passion project, helping other companies really and leaders really be more able to build better workplaces, healthier workplaces. And to those of you who are listening and viewing this, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, do so. Thank you very much for joining us on Rev Up Your Leadership. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to Rev Up Your Leadership with Hilda Gann. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date with our latest episodes. For more leadership and HR tips and strategies, and to learn how you can create a people-centric workplace, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.